Okay, so welcome back to another series on synths. So this is what I do right here. So this is going to be a series of videos, like 2 or 3. You know, this synth is very simple to understand and very simple to use, and we're going to do just that. We're going to learn how to use it, and then of course we're going to do some sounds. We're going to do some sound design. Maybe put it on a couple of maybe tracks, let's say. Or maybe create a track, tiny track with just maybe 16 loop. But we're going to do some sound design. We're going to use it. So this is one of the, the holy grails synthesizers, and I'm not going to go, through the history, because this is something, again, you can get from Wikipedia. All right, I don't need to tell you the history. If you want to do that, just go to Wikipedia and find it. So in this case, it's going to be the Juno from Roland. And okay, so let's just start from the beginning. And always it's what creates sound. So it's going to be the oscillator. So I'm going to go to the template and say default for now. Okay, so of course, if I play something, we get a sound. Okay, so right from the start, we're going to always use the default template because you are going to be starting from the same place. Okay, so usually when you use an analog synthesizer, you get, different type of oscillators, which is going to be a VCO, which is a voltage control oscillator, which is controlled by voltage. Now, in this case, with the June, you get the DCO, which is a digitally controlled oscillator, is not voltage. That's the first difference. Now, the Juno, or the June 6B, because this is the plugin of that, it's pretty simple. You don't get a lot of options to choose. You don't get a lot of options right here. Just get some simples, some simple options, but it's amazing the amount of sounds you can get with just very simple options. So the first thing that you get is going to be a saw. This is the first thing you get. And of course, if everything is disabled right here, you're just not going to get anything. So the first one is going to be a saw. If you play the saw, that's going to be the saw. Pretty simple, pretty neat. And notice that the saw, again, is just a bit rounded. And it's because, of course, all of this is an emulation of the analog synthesizer. It's not digital. It's not very perfect. So that's fine. Okay, so this is the first thing. You get a saw. So then you get other wave shapes like the square. And as soon as we play the square, we get a square. And notice that the square is very simple, right? Just a very square. So then, again, you start getting, a bit more, complexities right here. So with the, of course, with the square, what you can do, you can change the pulse width. And if you don't know what the pulse width is that you can change the width of the square, because this is a square and you just change the width. So of course, this one gives you a more hollow sound, let's say. All right. So of course, now it says right here, notice that the line goes to this control and it says main, and it's because you can manually, it says man instead of main. You can go manually, which is what I'm doing right now, or you can control this with an envelope or with an LFO. But we're going to talk about LFOs and envelope in a minute. So, okay. So then of course, I'm going to turn this off, and then what you get is a sub. And this is not very normal to all the synths. It's just something very particular of the synth. So this is going to be a square, of course, but it's going to be played lower. So notice you get a lower sound instead of this one. And this one has a volume control. And this is, of course, something that you can go right here, maybe provide something, and then maybe, let's say that you just play a chord, right? And then, maybe you need a little bit of lows, so then you go and you add a little bit of lows. That's the whole purpose of this. And it works magically well. All right, so I'm going to go and just go back. So, okay, of course, you can play the 3 things at the same time, the 3 oscillators at the same time, and you also get a noise control. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a noise. All right, so that's it. That's why this whole series is going to be just 2 or 3 videos, because this is a very simple synthesizer. You just get a square, you just a saw, a square with a little bit more control, and then you just get a sub. That's it. That's the only thing that you get. Now everything else is going to be, the LFO, the BC, the filters, and everything else. So let's go to the LFO, because right here we can do things to this square with the LFO, with the pulse width, and then the LFO. So whenever you use the LFO just like this, you're pretty much telling, okay, I'm going to be using this LFO to change the pitch. And by default, it's the pitch, right? Okay, so one thing that you need to be aware is that by default, you get some values right here. I'm going to go all the way down and make sure that the mod is all the way down. If not, it's going to interrupt what we want to do right here. So of course, if I play something, notice that we get nothing because we need to select the shape. And I'm going to go and select this one. And right from the start, we just get something. So you can go on very small amounts or you can go all the way in. And of course, it's going to get crazier. Now on the LFO, you get the sync control, which means that you can sync the speed of the LFO to the dot tempo. And I'm gonna go and go slower or go higher, or you can do manually in hertz, which is gonna be a smoother transition. And all of this is just very simple. It's something that you get with pretty much all, any given synthesizer. The LFO, just the oscillator. But then on this one, on the LFO, you get a delay time, which is again something that you get on much more modern synthesizers, or maybe very digital, like wave synthesis, like maybe cero or something like that. But something that you don't get with the hardware synthesizer, with an old hardware. So this one, what it will do, it will delay how the LFO will affect whatever is that we are doing, in this case, the pitch. So you get two modes. You get the delay and rise, and then you get the rise mode. So I'm going to go and say delay and rise. So when I play a note, just one single key, notice that the LFO is just starting right away. Right? And we can see it right here on the oscilloscope. Just right away. Now this one, what you will be, if you go up and you're selecting this mode, pretty much what you're saying is going to be, okay, so whenever you, you press a key, wait for, and you get up to, until 3 seconds. And then it's going to be just one, I'm going to wait for 1 second. And after 1 second, the LFO is going to start rising. That's why it says rise. So I'm going to go play it. We get nothing. And then slowly it starts to do the LFO. If I go 3 seconds, I play 1, 2, 3, and then it slowly goes and gives us the LFO. That's why it's called delay and rise. All right, so pretty simple stuff. Then you get the other mode, which is going to be just the rise. And notice that whenever we change this, we can, maybe change the values independently, and we get independent values. So, for example, the rise one, it's a little bit different than the delay. So it's doing this one is not doing at the beginning. It's just not going to wait for an amount of time. It's just going to go and kind of create a rising, a progression. And the amount of time that progression takes is going to be this one, which is, again, you get almost 3 seconds. So it means that it will get 3 seconds to reach the full, modulation. So it goes slow and then goes faster and faster and faster. And it will take 3 seconds to get to the full modulation. So of course there's a difference between these two, and it's again pretty obvious. And okay, I'm gonna go maybe not use them right now. Okay, so I'm back on a default template. I'm gonna start all over again, and I'm gonna go to this one. So since of course we know how the LFO works, what we can do, we can just play with the pulse width modulation. So if I go and play something, we know that that's the sound. And if I go and do it manually, we are just modulating the pulse width, the pulse width. And that's why it says M, because we can choose an LFO. And now the modulation, the LFO is going to take care of the modulation. So I'm going to go to something that, it's not that fast, so we can really see it. All right. Okay, so we know that works. Now, if I go right here, I'm going to go to the delay in time, and I'm going to see if this works. If I play something, notice it's not getting the effect. It's not waiting for something and then going. We can see on the oscilloscope that it's just going right away. Same thing with the rise. If I go all the way in and I play something, it's just going to do the modulation as soon as it starts. And then it's going to go really crazy. So again, maybe, and when I was just using this, I thought that maybe this one was gonna do it, but it just didn't. Maybe, I'm not really sure. I've played, the original synth a few years back, and I never tried this one, so I'm not really sure that this is faithful to the original synth, but that's fine, right? Okay. So we get the pulse width modulation, and notice that it gives you a different value. It's a 1, so which means it's going to go all the way in. The modulation is very aggressive, or you can go in very small amounts and just, do a little. All right. So again, that's what it means. And notice that the oscilloscope right now is kind of giving us a very visual detail of what is happening right here. Sometimes you need these tools, the oscilloscope and the frequency spectrum, to just to see and confirm what you're hearing, right? It's very important. So we're done with the LFO. We are done with the oscillators. So I'm going to go and select this one, just a saw. And then I'm going to talk about the filters. Now the filter, it's great. It's just a very cool filter, but it's a little bit weird to understand because we have the sliders and right now we have these controls. So if you know how maybe an ARP Odyssey works, so this is pretty similar in that case. So okay, so what a filter does is going to filter the high frequencies of whatever sound that this is producing. And right now, if I play something, it's just kind of we get a lot of high frequencies, and we can see it right there on the frequency spectrum, right? Okay, so right here with this frequency control, what we can do, we just can chop the high frequencies, and notice it's just a little bit aggressive. As soon as we do more, we just cut more until we get pretty much nothing, right? It's just a nice filter. Of course, with any given filter, what you get is the resonance control. So the resonance will create a peak at the breakpoint of the frequency spectrum. So if I start doing a boost, it's going to boost that part. And notice it's going into self-oscillation, which is something very particular of filters. And if we do a nice sweep, we get just a nice sweep. Cool. Right, so that's what the resonance does. Now, of course, this is a filter, and it's kind of like the soul of the filter. But you also get a high pass filter, which means that since this one is going to cut the high frequencies, this one is going to cut the low frequencies. So I'm going to go and get rid of the resonance right now. I'm going to go and start cutting the lows. So notice that the lows are kind of going away. Now, let me just play something lower. There we go. It's just cutting the low frequencies. Now, it's not super aggressive, but we can hear that the lows are just attenuated. All right, so that's it. That's what this does. Now, of course, all of this comes into, full circle when we use it with the envelope, the LFO, and the keyboard control. Okay, so right here, notice that we have an option to say positive or negative on the envelope. And this one, again, makes a reference to the envelope. So if we just use it like this, notice that, everything's too dark. I'm going to go play higher keys, maybe here, and everything's just too dark. And notice that as soon as I maybe go 50%, it's kind of a cutting too much. And notice this is the original sound. It just has a lot of high frequencies, but there, it's very dark, which is fine. Now, of course, what we want to do sometimes is to use an envelope to move this frequency control. Let's say that whenever I play something, I want this frequency to go up and then go down. All right. So we can provide this instruction with the envelope. And whenever we say envelope, in this case, we are talking about this envelope. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go right here and say, we are going to go and use the envelopes. And you can use in, a part of the envelope, maybe is not going to use this envelope so aggressively right here. It's just going to, do a percentage. But if you want to go all the way, it's going to use the full capability of the envelope. It's going to do whatever the envelope says. Okay, so notice I'm going really low right here. So with the envelope off, we cannot, hear almost anything. It's just cutting all the frequencies. So now if I'm going to say that the envelope is going to control this, we need to go and use this envelope. And notice that as soon as I play it, the sound changes radically. So this envelope, and I'm going to explain how ADSR works. And it's because this whole series of videos I do of synthesizers I'm targeting beginners. So, yeah, right? So I'm targeting beginners. So if you're just starting with this, maybe you don't know what ADSR is. And if I don't tell you, you will never learn how to make this work. So I really need to, of course, tell you how this works and show you how this works. Of course, if you already know how this works, maybe you could just move, through the video just a little bit. Okay, so right from the start, I'm going to go to gate on the VCA, and I'm going to talk about the VCA in a couple minutes. So, okay, so how, ADSR works, how an envelope works with ADSR. So ADSR, of course, is attack, decay, sustain, and release. That's what it means. And this one will provide an instruction in how we want to move this. So what we want to achieve is that every time I press a key, I want this frequency control to go up and then go down to the original position. That's our goal right here. Okay, so I'm gonna press, I want to go up and then down, right? That's what we want to do. So then we get the attack, decay, and sustain, and release. So the attack is going to be how long it's going to take for this knob to go up to some place and then go down, right? How long is going to take it to go up and then down? Actually, it's going to be how long it's going to take to get up. And then, of course, we need to get down, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. The attack control will just decide that. Now, of course, when we press a key, it's going to take an amount of time to go up. So this one, it's milliseconds. Notice it says 1 millisecond. And this means that it's super fast. So as soon as we play a key, this knob is going whoop, all the way up. Right, so that's what it does. And I'm going to go right here and say, okay, so now every time I play something, it's going to take 1 second to go up. And we can hear it's just taking a little while. And we can see it on the frequency spectrum. We can see that sweep. And then, of course, it needs to go back. But with this one, you can go up to 3 seconds. So it's going to take 1, 2, 3 to get to the highest peak and then go back. Yeah, so it's that simple. Now, of course, usually what you choose is you choose a value depending on what you want to create. If you want a bass, if you want to some pads or some leads, just depends on the sound. Now, of course, the rule is that everything that goes up needs to come down. That's the rule, right? We know that rule. So, of course, this is going up with the attack, but then it needs to go back to the original position. And this one, for now, I'm going to go all the way down on the release. We're going to talk about this one in a second. This decision is going to be made by the decay, right? The attack is how long it's going to go up, and the decay will decide how long it takes to go back to the same spot. So if the attack is going to take 1 second, the decay is going to take maybe 1.5 seconds, right? So it's going to go up, take 1 second, and then take 1.5 seconds to go back. And we can see this. So notice that the transition now, the going back, is much smoother. Now, if I go all the way down, I'm going to press something, goes up, and then just, goes back to the original place. But it's super quick. Now, of course, if you want something quicker, maybe 300 milliseconds is something that it's not so abrupt. You just keep going up until you get something that you want. Now it's just a bit nicer. Of course, the attack is just, way too much. Sometimes if you want, let's say you want to create a plucky sound, maybe a little bit of decay, maybe no attack, will give you that pluck sound. If you want to create some pads, maybe, going to a slow attack and maybe a slow decay, or maybe a slower decay, something like that, something very long. Right? And you get that sound. All right, so now we know what the attack and decay does. It's going to take an amount of time to go up and then some amount of time to go back to the original position. So then you get the sustain. So why do we need the sustain? We're already going up and down. Now, with the sustain, we'll break the rule of what everything that goes up needs to come down. Because this one is going up and then down to the original position. But maybe we want to stay right here when it goes down. So what I want to do is to go up and go down, but I don't want to go back to the original position. I just want to maybe stay some place right there. And this is what the sustain is going to do. After the decay, the sustain is going to sustain whatever it is that you're doing at some point. So right now, the sustain is all the way down. So it's going up. And let me just, go maybe here. It's going up and then down and dies, right? And completely dies. But the sustain is going to sustain that right there on that frequency, or that part in this case. It's going to go up, goes down, and notice it's not dying. It's just staying at some position. And if I'm pressing and holding a key right now. So if I start moving this, notice that the frequency will change, and it's because we are sustaining a note. That's what it calls the sustain level. And then the other thing that happens is that, of course, it's kind of sustaining the frequency right here. Of course, maybe some part there. So it's going up and not going all the way down. It's just gonna holding at some point. That's what the sustain does. And right now we are talking about how this works with the frequency control, not with the amp, which is the sound that comes out. It's the same principle, but it works a little bit different. So okay, so now we know this one is the amount of time that takes to go up, amount of time that takes to go back, and then of course this sustain, right? Which is going to sustain that sound, or maybe the knob is just not going to go all the way back, and it's going to sustain at some point, right? So then we have the release, and again, why do we need the release? So the release is going to be how it's going to react when we release a key. That's what it means. That's why it's called release. So right now, when I release a key, I'm going to go and press something. We go up, then we go down. We are sustaining at some point, at some part of the frequency spectrum. And when I release the keys, it goes all the way out, right? Which is kill the sound. Goes down, it will sustain. I'm going to release the key in 3, 2, 1, and then it dies. So the release, what it will do, it will say, okay, so whenever this dude releases the key, it's going to take an amount of time for the cutoff, whatever, it's sustaining, to go back to the original position in this case. So I'm going to go and say that maybe it's going to be, 3 seconds. That's fine. And I'm going to go and play. It's going to go up. It's going to sustain. And when I release the key, it's just cutting right away. And this is because we have a problem. Notice that the VCA, it says gate. So this is kind of a on and off. We have no release value. And this is the one that controls how the sound comes out of the synthesizer. And right now we are using it to control the VCF, but not the VCA. So the problem is that we have no release. So this one, it's just useless for us right now. So with this plugin, we have a way of choosing a different envelope on the advanced section. We are not going to talk about the advanced section, but I'm just going to use it to show you what it does. So I'm going to go and say that this sound, whatever the sound that comes out from this one, has a long release, right? It's just very long release, 5 seconds, a lot. So now, since we have a release on this one, I'm going to do a little bit of decay. So now, since we have a release on the sound, this release will work on the envelope. So I'm going to go play something, goes up, goes down, it will sustain, and when I release, now we have a smoother transition to the sound, right? Because the frequency is sustaining some here and it's smoothing all the way down. It's just not like going all the way down like this. It's just going very smoothly, and it takes 3 seconds to 3.5 seconds to do this. So this is the control, the envelope that we are using for this one, for the frequency, right? And it gets the job done. But if I do a chord, right, so we get that sound. It's pretty cool. So we can do the opposite. Right now, what we are doing is providing this instruction that, it needs to go up and then down, blah, 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 blah. But then we get the other one, which is the negative. So this means that if I'm all the way down, it's just going to go down. That's why we get no sound. It's just going down on the actual frequencies, doing the opposite movement. So we are kind of inverting the value. So if I go up on the frequency, maybe go all the way there, notice this is doing the opposite. Let me do it again. And I'm pressing and holding. Now this is the release that we are, doing right here because it's too much. I'm just going to do a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go there. Right, so you're pretty much inverting the controls in this one. It's kind of a useful thing if you want to, if you want to do something very specific in this case. I'm just going to leave it there. Okay, so notice that the envelope, we are going 100%. And we get that nice sweep. And if I go, to smaller amounts, we are just going to get a part of whatever we are doing with the envelope. Right, so that's it. That's the envelope. So then what else do we have? We have the LFO. So in this case, I'm maybe not going to do anything of the envelope, just going to leave the envelope alone. And I'm going to go and control the VCA, the volume that goes out with this envelope. So for now, I'm just going to go again, no attack, a little bit of decay, maybe, going to go all the way in sustain and do something like this. Right? So we almost get no sound because we are just chopping the frequency. So that's the sound, right? Maybe I'm going to do a little bit of sustain. Why not? Okay. So I'm going to talk about how the sound, how the envelope, or the VCA and the envelope work. But first I want to show you the LFO because we can modulate the frequency control with an LFO. So I'm going to go all the way up and I'm saying that the LFO is going to modulate this frequency. And I'm adding a little bit of resonance. So as soon as I play something, we can see it right here, and we can see that my computer is loading. So, yeah. So we can see the LFO moving the frequency for us. And it's that simple. Now, of course, always with any synthesizer, the real cool sound comes when you add a little bit of effects. So I'm just going to add a little bit and maybe a little bit of chorus. We're going to talk about this much later. But right now, there you go. It is that easy. So this is one of those synthesizers when you start, move tiny things and you do just a little bit and you get a great sound. You just get a great sound right from the start. If I do a little bit of sub, a little bit of this. Right, super awesome. And you get a sound easily as that. So, okay, so of course this is the LFO. And then you have the keyboard. So the keyboard, what it will just modulate the LFO. Right here, it says, if you notice at the bottom, it will give you the, kind of a notification saying what it does. It says, defines how much the keyboard modulates the BC cutoff. So if I'm not doing anything, I'm going to maybe just do something like there. I'm going to go all the way down. So if I just start playing keys, notice that the filter is very consistent through all the keys. It doesn't matter if I'm playing high keys or I'm playing low keys, right? It's just pretty consistent. Now the keyboard control, it will just decide how much of the value of the note will modulate the cutoff, or how this one will work. Right now, we are just cutting a lot. So the low keys, notice that we still cut a lot. But if I go and play a high key, that cut is not a lot. So now the value or whatever note you're playing on different octaves is going to matter to how much of the cutoff frequencies you're doing. So the higher keys are going to be sounding a little bit brighter, and the darker keys, like the lower keys, are going to sound a little bit, darker, because it's going to do a little bit more of the cutoff. And again, this is just a different type of modulation, and you can combine the envelope with the LFO and a little bit of the keyboard if you wish. And you're gonna get, of course, always a different sound. And if I go maybe all the way down, notice that the sound changes. It's just a bit darker. And this, of course, depends on the keys that you play. All right, so that's pretty much it. So on this one, the only thing that it's left is going to be the VCA and the envelope. And for now, I'm going to go to a default and just load nothing. Okay. So now we know how an envelope works, right? Now on the VCA, you have different options. You can use this envelope, or you can use a gate. And gate means pretty much like the attack starts right away. That's pretty much a gate. Then you get the decay, and then it will sustain all over the place if you just hold the key, and then you have no release at all. That's what a gate means. And then you have an envelope 2, which, which is this one. We're going to talk about that later. But this one gives you the possibility of using the envelope, this envelope, just for the filters. And then maybe if you don't care about using an envelope to, to control the sound that comes out, you just use a gate. In this case, I don't care about the filter. I'm going to use this envelope to control the sound. Now, VCA, it's voltage control amplifier. That's what it means. And this will decide how the sound comes out, the volume. That's what it will control. So, for example, since now we know how ADSR works, it's pretty much the same thing we've been doing with the filter, but it's for the volume that goes out. And for example, let's say I'm going to play something and I want a smooth introduction to a sound, right? I want the volume to ramp up. So this was going to be the attack, how long it takes to get to the full, volume. And we can see it right here on the spectrum. I'm going to go no sustain and maybe a little bit of decay. Why not? So I'm going to go play a chord. Notice it takes a little bit of time. And now we know that the decay, of course, is going to be how long it takes to go down. Maybe I'm going to go and select a really long decay. But notice that the volume goes up in kind of a ramp mode. If I go very slow, it will slowly go up. So remember, the attack is how long it takes to go or to reach to maximum peak, let's say. So it's going to take 2.9, which is 3 seconds to get to the highest volume that this can do. And okay, so maybe we want to do it quick. So this is going to be very quick as soon as you press a key. Now remember, the decay is how long it will take to go down. So if I go and say, I don't know, 1.5 seconds, and then maybe make this one like that, it's going to take very short time and go down. And you can see the spectrum of the volume going down, right? Of course, again, if we go and provide a different amount, it's just going to take longer to go down in volume. Now, remember, the sustain is going to be, do we want to sustain this at some point? Where the volume goes down, it's going to go all the way down, or it's going to stop and kind of stay at some point. So again, this is what the sustain will do. So this means the sound will take 90 seconds to get to the maximum value. It's going to take 3.5 seconds to go down, and then it will stay somewhere right here on the spectrum. So I'm going to go up, then it goes down, takes 3 seconds, and it will just sustain at some point. And of course, I'm pressing and holding, right? Right, so that's it. And I'm going to go a little bit. There we go. And we can clearly see the sustain. Where is sustaining? It goes up, then down, and then sustains. And then the next part is going to be the release, which is, again, the same. How long it will take for the sound to go to full silence when we release the keys that we are holding. So I'm going to go and say it's going to take 2 seconds to go, or maybe a little more, to go to full silence. So I'm going to play. I'm sustaining. Right now we are at the sustaining stage. And when I release, it's going to go out slowly, right? If I go down, when I release the keys, it's just going to be super fast. It's just like killing sound. So maybe sometimes, depends on what you're doing, a little bit of release will provide a smoother transition when you change keys or when you change chords. If not, it's going to be just, too abrupt. That's why you want a little bit of release. And that's it. That's the, that's the envelope. Remember, with the gate, you get something else. And if you want to use some very specific controls with the filter and the envelope, you can always go and use the envelope number 2 right here at the top. And this one, it's the same envelope. It works exactly the same. With this one, you can do, a few different things, but we're going to talk about that much later. And just by using this, you can create great sounds, just great sounds. Let's say I want to do a little bit of this. I just want to do a little bit of envelope, and we are just getting, just a nice sound, that classic old school kind of a sound. Gonna go there, maybe just a little bit of release. Maybe a little bit more. And remember, everything all the synths or anything that you do with the synth, or actually any sound, I'm talking about guitars or any other instrument, if you don't put effects, it's going to sound like crap. That's the way it works. So maybe I'm going to do a little bit of chorus, maybe just that one. I'm going to go again and do a little bit of dry and wet of the reverb, and you can now get a much better sound. Let's say you want a little bit more, maybe some subs, you can add the subs. Maybe you can add a little bit of LFO to create kind of a motion on the pitch. That is just kind of getting that old school vibe of the pitch. If you want to go crazy, of course you can go crazy. And again, if you want a little bit of noise, just to add something else. And that's it, you know, it just took us, what, 2 seconds and we already got a great sound. And on top of that, of course, you can add delay, which is going to give you a little bit of depth. Right, so just a great sound. This is one of those synths when you start, you know, doing something, moving some knobs, and you're always going to get a good sound. So this is the first part of the video, and we could have of the series. We could have almost covered, you know, every single aspect, so you can go and start using it at this point. But on the next one, we're going to talk a little bit more about how the arpeggio works, how, you know, the chorus works, how, you know, this section works, why do we get this, how we control the panel. And then on the other video, we're going to talk about the advanced section. So let's go to the next one and talk about the remaining parts.